Hello, I am Zinfogel. My friends, it's time for yet another Datamine discussion video. This month we have 5 new sync pairs and 1 new sync grid for Giovanni and Mewtwo. That's pretty nice. There is also 3 new Egmont families, but I want to cover that when the event drops. Well, let's get started. Alright, let's kick this off with Ingo and Excadrill. And I am recording this before this unit comes out, but I don't need to see this in practice to tell you that this unit is ultra busted. So this is a ground type support Pokéfair, and it has Sandstorm. So Ingo single-handedly buries Acerola's viability, and Excadrill enables sand team compositions, which is the reason everybody is so hype about this guy. But I want to ignore that for a second, and the rest of the kit for that matter, because I want to focus on the terrain move. So Ingo's terrain move comprises +1 attack and +2 crit for the entire party, and having a dire kill plus is phenomenal on its own. But the real use here is in the secondary effect. When you use this terrain move during a sandstorm, it applies free move next for the entire party. That is really scary. Ingo is the undisputed king of dual strike team compositions because he gives you instantaneous offense by the second turn of a fight. Accounting for the fact that your own strikers can buff by themselves, Ingo gives you very fast critical hit rate and also nullifies gauges, so you can run dual hyper beam users alongside Ingo and it wouldn't be a problem because he makes gauges irrelevant. Especially accounting for the fact that the 1-5 grid has an NPR3 on the turn move, so you have a very good chances of constantly spamming this after using Sandstorm. So I think people are laser focusing too hard on Sandstorm's utility, which is really good, don't get me wrong, but you don't have to run Sand Abusers alongside Ingo. He allows you to spam any move your heart desires. This is an extremely busted turn move, I cannot stress this enough. But we are not done yet, because the rest of Ingo's kit is actually insane. As a support, Excadrill can handle tanking. You've got a solid defensive stats augmented by Sedimentary. This is a new passive that comprises Sand Shelter and also buffs your defenses by 30%, so this is a really solid damage filter. And you've also got Potion to keep yourself alive, so Excadrill is not going down in combat. Now, this is all counterbalanced by the fact that Excadrill's offense doesn't exist. Your only attacking move is Mud Slap. So Ingo is ironically similar to Acerola, at least compared to other weather setters like May, Silver, Archie, Maxi, who have very strong offensive presence. But Ingo's playstyle is more about enabling his teammates so that they carry the pace of the battle instead. And this is possible because of how good his kit is at supporting. And he also has access to a 6-star EX support bonus to enhance this function. So, a couple other things. You've got Sandy Pep Rally 9. This is a guaranteed speed buff for the party when you use a move during a sandstorm. This should proc when you activate Sandstorm and use like Shooting Sand, but we will have to wait and see. And Ferocious Affliction 2, this buffs the party's attack and special attack by a couple of stages when you use a status move for the first time. So you activate Sandstorm and you also top off most strikers indistinguishable of their spectrum. So you can slap Raihan and Cynthia on the same team composition and Ingo can top them off. Now, if Excadrill has one weakness, is that you've only got Sandstorm with a couple uses, and the full grid only offers a Sandstorm NPR2. Now, I would normally complain about this, but Ingo has such a hyper-offensive playstyle that the enemy team should be dead by the time you use Sandstorm a couple times, so I don't think this is relevant, Ingo just has an innate capacity at enabling other strikers to do damage really, really fast, so having permanent Sandstorm is unneeded, honestly. Well, Ingo is a boss support. We haven't seen enabling capabilities of this degree except through 35 Hilbert, I suppose. But I wouldn't call this a must-have because this allows a very specific flavor of hyper-offense. And to truly capitalize from Ingo's capabilities, you have to have some of the heftier 3-5 Sand Strikers. Cynthia, Raihan, Emmet, And like in them, you can just run your 6-star EX striker of choice instead. Ingo is amazing, but for people who have Sun units invested. Now, before checking the grid, I want to make it explicitly clear that 1-5 Excadrill is more than enough, because you have the turn move NPR, and this is everything Ingo needs to be busted, so don't get baited into pulling a 3-5 Ingo, because the base kit is super solid, unless you really like the guy, but I don't know, the rest of the grid is kinda whatever. So 2-5 gives you a couple Master Healer 1 tiles, so when accounting for Guarded Entry 1, this gives you some defense and special defense buffs when you enter the field. Then this should more than guarantee Excadrill survival. And you also got Greedy Guardian 1. This has a chance of buffing your defenses when you use a move during a Sandstorm, as well as during Sun 1. But you are not really proccing this because, well, first off, you have Potion to heal yourself. And Excadrill is mostly spamming turn moves, so you don't attack to have the chance to proc these effects. You also got Adrenaline 1, and this is really good, accounting for the fact that you have the 6-star EX support bonus. So this gives you a quote-unquote guaranteed quad Q, so that you reach your next sync cycle in 3 rounds of combat, instead of having to do some advanced denial or doing a proper quad Q. So I am going to pull for Ingo and then canding him to the 2-5 so I can get the Adrenaline 1 consistency as well as the Master Healer tiles, but the rest of the grid, I don't know. Like, you've got Endurance, this is helpful so that you can tank some random critical hit, but you are giving this Vigilance, and Excadrill is so bulky anyway that I don't think you are ever reaching this unless you face some absurdly strong encounter. You've got Sync Cure, which I guess can help if you plan for it, and Quick Cure so that you can deter interferences. You also got a Potion NPR3 so that you can keep your other party members healthy, that can kinda help. The Sandstorm NPR2 as we talked about earlier, and Pocket Sand 4. This has a 50% chance of dropping accuracy by 1 stage when you attack, and with Mud Slap Ripple Effect too. I guess this can kinda help so that you can buff Disempower May under Surging Sand 5 for a funny meme, but I don't think it's very practical. You also got a Fail Forward 1 when the target misses an attack, then you recharge some gauge, but again, Ingo makes gauges irrelevant, so it doesn't help that much. But yeah, there you go, there's Excadrill. I hope that Clay gets the BP Excadrill someday for the offensive one, but this is a really good unit. Like, when we see this in practice, I think people will realize the potency of Ingo's turn move. That thing is so busted. Okay, here we have Emmet and Archeops, the other twin. This is a rock-type Pokémon striker, and just as a minor note, you don't have to pull Ingo to be able to run Emmet. It's not like they have a codependency where their kits are intertwined, though they have good synergies because Archeops has an innate 30% Sand multiplier. He is a perfectly good standalone striker, and if you're pulling for budget, he has a very solid base kit. Now, Emmet is your run-of-the-mill Pokémon striker. He buffs self-sufficiently, has good multipliers, and strong attacks. You know, the usual. Stat-wise, he's squishy. He has a mediocre attack stat, which is concerning, but a good speed stat, so solid all around. Your main damaging moves are Stone Edge and Rock Slide, so you have the single target as well as the AoE offensive presence, and they are enhanced by Healthy Strength 5, which is a little callback to Defeatist from the main games. When you are above 50% HP, you gain a 50% multiplier, so it's in your best interests to keep Emmet healthy. And you've also got Hit the Gas 5. This is the anti-ice multiplier that boosts your base power at the cost of extending the gauges needed to execute your moves. So Stone Edge and Rock Slide become 4 bars with Hit the Gas 5, but it's totally worth it because the multiplier is really good. And you've got a Sand Superiority 3, so this comprises Sand Shelter and Surging Sand 3 on the same slot. So you kinda want to run Emmet in Sand team compositions, but you don't need to because he still has the Healthy Stream 5 and the Hit the Gas 5 in name multipliers, so his output is still absurd even without accounting Sand Superiority. Lastly, Emmet has Direct Hit Plus to maximize his own critical hit rate. Do note that Stone Age is a plus crit move, so by using a Dire Hit plus once, you maximize the critical hit rate when using it, and this spares Emmet a very crucial turn when running him as a pure DPS unit. And you also get a similar synergy when using Emmet alongside Ingo, because Ingo raises critical hit rate by a couple of stages for the entire party, and after using Emmet's turn move, then Ingo can buff him and he can start spamming Stone Ages by the second turn of a fight. And the third move grants him instant offense. It's a plus 6 attack and plus 2 accuracy, so you fix Stone Age and Rock Slide misses, and it also debuffs defense by 1 stage, but that's irrelevant. It's only 1 use though, but this has a similar quality to Alder and Halai's turn moves. It's really good. And you've also got this new effect called Damage Guard next, so what this does is it either nullifies an instance of damage or it halves the power of a sync move. This is used to help Emmet preserve healthy Strength 5, so it's quite nice. And if used during a Sandstorm, it also lowers the sync countdown by 1, but at the start of a fight, this is not really helpful unless you do multiple sync accelerations. Ultimately, Emmet is pure DPS asteroids. He buffs immediately and murders garbage, and what else do you need out of a striker? But given his scaling, he has a very comparable playstyle to the Anta, because they don't have any innate multipliers like field effects to take advantage of, rather they rely on their innate asteroids to carry their offense relative to other strikers. Now, relative to the Anta, Emmet is a little weaker than her if he doesn't activate the Sun Superiority, so if you're accustomed to the Anta is striking playstyle, Emmet reaches a similar threshold. But Emmet has an advantage in that he doesn't have to Mega Evolve. You can afford a 6-star EX support bonus to have some really meaty Stone Ages to eviscerate the battle with, or you can bring a 6-star EX Sync Nuking partner like Olivia, so that she raises the size instead and they can just focus damage on center and finish stages very, very quickly. Considering that Ingo is going to grant us with a new age of dual striking team compositions, I think that Emmet best pairs alongside Ingo, of course for the Sun multipliers as well as the free Dire Hit plus that Ingo grants to the party, but you can bring another 4-bar striker like say Raihan, so that they just spam really strong 4-bar moves all over the battlefield, and that would be an easy off-type if I ever seen any. So whether you want to bother with a Sand dual striker for Emmet, or you want to bring some defense debuffs so he functions as a standalone striker, Emmet is a really potent DPS unit at base. We're kinda accustomed to this treatment from Pokémon strikers, so I don't think Emmet is bringing something new to the table per se. Okay, I think we can check out the grid. The 1-5 only has MGRs. This can kinda help if you are stuck with Acerola as a partner, but if you're running Ingo, he makes Chaos irrelevant, so this is kinda pointless. You are stuck with your base kit. The 2-5 grants Sun Fortress to block stat drops during a Sandstorm. Okay, thanks I guess. And then a Fierce State 4 to help preserve a healthy Strength 5, so it is handy. And some more MGRs as well as Sands of Time too. Now, like I mentioned, Ingo makes gauges irrelevant, so going for this much gauge is ultra overkill. Rather, this helps in structures where you are stuck with Acerola or Tech Kabutops, and you want to run Olivia for dual strike, then having all this gauge will help a lot. And for the full grid, you get some proper multipliers. You get a healthy power of 1, so 10% multiplier, used like Archie and Kyogre, and you gain Stone Age critical strike too. So if this wasn't your main damaging move already, now it officially is, because you just cannot waste the opportunity of using this multiplier. Given the multiplicative nature of Hitegas 5 and Healthy Strength 5, Emmet outputs some fat numbers. Like, he's one of the scarier Unga Bunga strikers when fully invested. He does some really good damage, and you should always grab these 30% multipliers if you unlock the full grid for Archeops. Besides that, you also have Soften Up 1 to guarantee your sync crits its target, so that's a guaranteed sync nuke, considering that you also have the 6-star EX striker bonus for the AoE nuke, enhanced by Sun Blaster 5, so yeah, Emmet can nuke decently, but it's not better than Olivia's Sync nuke. So if you want to dual strike with both of them, then just let Olivia handle the nuking, and you would output better damage ultimately. You gain Sand Sync, use like Solar Sync or Shower Sync. When you sync for the first time, you can summon Sandstorm. But if you're doing that, then it means that you probably didn't have Sandstorm active already to sync nuke. I don't know, this is not that helpful because Emmet doesn't have any weather extensions like Archie and Maxi. This really doesn't help given the energy cost, so you just have Ingo or Acerola resummon Sand. And you also have a Piercing Gaze, but this doesn't help because your turn move gives you +2 accuracy, so Stone Edge and Rock Slide are already accurate. This only helps against targets that have derivation raised. And Head Start 1 used to accelerate the sync when you enter the field, but it's so costly, it's really not worth it. Something I neglected to mention was Rock Slide Aggravation 1, which gives Emmet some really strong tech utility in conjunction with his absurd power. When using this, your chances of flinching with Rock Slide jump from 30% to 60%, kinda like Acerola. So you can keep enemies flinch locked, but when damage is spread, secondary effects get cut in half. So when this is AoE, your chances of flinching go back down to 30%, which is still solid. But I would rather still use a Stone Age because it has access to Critical Strike too, and Emmet is a DPS unit, so you don't really need to be flinch locking enemies to begin with. But I would consider this a really good tool for Legendary Arena, so you can keep the boss flinch locked through the course of a match. Now, the build I would recommend for Archeops would be pure DPS. Now that Ingo creates so many opportunities for dual strike Sand team compositions, you can just afford to run raw damage and bring a tier partner who can also assist with the output. So you prefer Sand Striker like 3-5 Cynthia, 3-5 Raihan, or Signuke Olivia. Olivia kinda kills the DPS, but she can make that up through rock type skills as well as her Signuke. And yeah, I don't see any stage that can survive that combined pressure. It would be quite nice, considering the fact that Ingo can provide a 6-star EX support bonus. So yeah, that would be pretty good. If you want to sync nuke with Archeops, it is very capable of doing that, but the nuke is weaker than Olivia, so I don't think it's really worth going for. But you can go for all the singing tiles, augment your attack a bit further, because remember that Archeops' attack stat is a little sad. But besides that, you can also do a soften up build to guarantee your nuke, but that sacrifices some power, so I am not too keen on recommending this. Lastly, I would consider a gauge build for Archeops if you don't have Ingo, because you are then stuck with Acerola or Tech Kabutops who are not as efficient at generating gauge, and you kinda want the help if you are dual striking. But if you have Kukui as a partner, then you don't really need to generate gauge per se, so you can go back to the DPS build and it will give you good results either way. So Archeops is a really strong striker. I would put it in a similar tier to Alder or Diantha, where if you're looking for a raw DPS unit to murder stages with, yep, Archeops is really, really good. It's a summertime, baby! We've got some brand new summer seasonals. Amongst them is Gloria and Inteleon. Yet another war-type striker. You know, one of my mantras in this game is that every simper has use. Like, I routinely shit out meme videos because I feel like it, even though I could be running meta-relevant units, but I have fun using bad units, and I always felt that everything has a purpose. Now, it's been a really long time since I've looked at a unit and said, I literally don't care about this. Gloria Inteleon comes at a time where we already got past Archie and Kyogre, Ness and Dreadnought, Greedy Cyrus and Palkia, May and Swampert. DNA has bloated us with water-type damage, and for a new water-type striker to be relevant, they either needed to power creep everything before them or have a strong distinguishing niche, which I think, in my subjective opinion, Gloria fails to accomplish. So Gloria has a very fun playstyle. It's creative but a little impractical in a vacuum. First off, she's got a decent stat spread with a mediocre-ish special attack stat. This is Archie Syndrome all over again. Not as bad, but this is DNA's attempt at counterbalancing the fact that you have a 4-bar War-type move that can be enhanced with Rain Dance. So Gloria has some coverage options. This reminds me of a Bugsy Scyther that I ran once with Hydro Cannon over Snapshot, and when I used that, I used spam Hydro Cannon because it was my best output by far and you could get the Rain Dance boost. I never clicked the Air Slash and Dark Pulse unless I needed coverage options, and it's a similar principle in Pokémon Masters, where yeah, this coverage is cute, and if you hit super effectively, it will do okay damage, but it is never surpassing Rain Dance boosted Snapshot. You can argue that this is foreshadowing for the Dynamax coverage options, but this is irrelevant to me because Galar Simpers right now cannot Dynamax, so it doesn't matter. So this is 4 bars and it has a +1 crit, which is fine considering that your turn move only grants a sure crit. But the problem is that Snapshot is relatively weak for a 4-bar move. It's only 3 more base power than Hydro Pump, 5-5 Hydro Pump. Hence why I am going to continue the comparisons with Cyrus and Palkia. But it is a decent DPS when you count the Rain Dance multiplier. So Air Slash gives Gloria some tech utility, but it's rather weak compared to Snapshot. And Dark Pulse, similar issue. It's okay, has a chance of flinching, but Snapshot is way stronger. We're in accounting Rain Dance. So the fun part of this kit is scoping them out. It's a 1 MP turn move that grants +1 special attack, +1 speed, and sure crit next with super effective next. You also have this passive called Critical Refresh 9, so when you land a crit, you recharge an MP. And the idea here is that you kind of play Inteleon like a proper sniper, where you attack, then recharge, get your multipliers, your sure crit, and then attack again, and then recharge, and so on and so forth. Now, this is what I meant when I said fun, because conceptually it's an interesting gimmick. You also got Critical Strike 3 to enhance the power of your moves, so more multipliers, and Critical Freebie 4, so when you crit, you also derive benefits from it. But this is Pokémon Masters, it's a team game, so you don't have to bother with this gimmick whatsoever when you can have Sarina fix up your crit and special attack and you will be good to go. And yeah, super effective next is a handy multiplier, but if you keep recharging it to attempt to have Dark Pulse outdamage Snapshot, then you are missing DPS because you are not clicking Dark Pulse constantly. So yeah, it's a funny gimmick, but in practical contexts, I rather buff up and bring Rain Dance to boost Snapshot and just constantly spam this instead. So ultimately, if you ignore the recharging gimmick, Inteleon is a strong DPS unit with a good Sync. As a War type, your Sync can be enhanced with Rain Dance, and you have the refreshable Super Effective Next as well as Sure Crit Next. On super effective contexts, Gloria decimates her targets. Lack of power is not an issue on this kit, it is quite strong. But I can also use Cyrus and Palkia to decimate my targets. So the real problem here is Gloria is context in the metagame. Let's discuss some numbers. Let me very briefly skim through the grid. 1-5 has nothing, 2-5 has Critrasophy 2 for a sync multiplier, the 3-5 gives you more BP multipliers, ramming speed, super duper effective too. You get some multipliers for Air Slash and Dark Pulse, but again, they just cannot compete with Rain Dance boosted Snapshot, so there is no reason to bother with that. Standard Inteleon build would be something like this, go for sinking tiles as well as all the multipliers you can have, and this outputs some really good numbers. So with this grid, Gloria is one of the better War-type DPS units. She is weaker than Cyrus and May, but she's stronger than Singasud Grimsley, Nessa, Chris. Her raw DPS is respectable. But her real power lies in her Sync, because you have the super effective next as well as a Rain Dance multiplier, so it's very easy to set up. But it's still weaker than Singasud Grimsley, than May, than Barry with Cakewalk. She's only surpassing Chris is Haymaker Sync, so... Oh man... Inteleon's timing is atrocious. If this were summer 2020, I would have told you to pull this unit, but these days, this is a hard skip. I don't think I am even going to attempt dailies on this. Up next, we have Summer Marnie and Grimmsnarl. And the first time Marnie rolled around with Morpeko, I did a disservice to the unit. I really underestimated the power trip's damage, and I feel I have some wrongs to correct here. So I am now more experienced with doing analysis, and I will try to be more careful. Now, Grimmsnarl is a physical fairy tech that has an extremely solid base kit. The gimmick here is raising stats with status moves. You've got Bull Cap that costs 2 gauges, but it raises attack and defense by 1 stage. So it's an MP-free means of raising your stats. And this sounds very slow ramping, but your passives really beef this up. You've got a double buffer that increases the efficiency of your stat increases when using status moves, and the description also implies that it raises stats for allies as well, but we don't have another status move to check that yet, but that might be powerful in the future. Besides that, you've got a critical infliction 9, so when using Bull Cap, you also raise your critical hit rate by 1 stage. So by this point, you got a +2 attack, +2 defense, and +1 crit per use of Bull Cap, and it's MP free, so also extremely good for bodybuilder climbing. And you've got a Super Infliction 4, which has a 50% chance of applying Super Effective next when using Bull Cap. This is mostly to give you the opportunity to Sync Nuke on Super Effective contexts, because after fully buffing up with Bull Cap, you don't want to use Bull Cap again just to attempt to nab the Super Effective next. Speaking of the Sync Nuke, you also have Innate Rising Tide, so the more stat raises, the better base power you get here. And Marnie's turn move revolves all around buffing with Bull Cap as well. It grants regeneration plus endure, but it equals defense and attack stat increases with special defense and speed increases. So after 3 Bull Cap uses, Marnie becomes a super unit that has all of her relevant stats maxed out. It's actually crazy. She fully sets herself without any help whatsoever, and considering the stat yield, that is crazy. If you 6-star EX Marnie for the stat increases, she's a respectable tank, considering that she maximizes her own defensive stats and also has regeneration for some recovery. So I think a good way to describe Grimmsnarl is Terminator, because this is a one-man army. You just give yourself everything you need for the purposes of freeing up team slots to help with your grid multipliers, because you have a Fall Fighting 3, Devastation, and Overpower, which have some complex setup, so you want other techs helping you out with that. Anyway, your moves are Spirit Break 4 bars, a little weak for a 4 bar, but it's functional. It always drops the target's special attack to play off from Devastation and Overpower. And you also have a Crunch used for some coverage, also a chance of debuffing defense, kinda handy, and it can function for Dark Weak stages for sure. So the deal with Grimmsnarl is that it has a very similar playstyle to Karen and Houndoom, where if you capitalize from your buffing efficiency, you're probably taking a couple sync cycles to set up the field of play, because you gotta buff your offenses and you also have to set up your tech multipliers. And Devastation and Overpower are some of the more complex debuff multipliers to set up, because you have limited options. You can bring a Champion Iris or Getsis or Lieutenant Surge and Electrode if you are desperate. But Viola is your best friend, because just like Karen, she can help you with special attack debuffs through Struggle Bug, as well as Infestation to set up the Fall Fighting multiplier. But even when you account for all that setup, when you have a Fall Fighting 3 and Overpower active, you don't have a better DPS than the Antha. So what about the Sync Nuke? With Devastation and the Sinking Tiles, you have a much stronger nuke than Palentine's Arena. But even relative to Palentine's Arena, the difficulties of setting up your multipliers are very apparent, because Palentine's Arena only has to use her terrain move to buff ramming speed, and then spread AoE paralysis to activate Paralysis Synergy 5, as well as her innate sync multiplier. What you're looking at here is a good unit with excellent self-sufficiency, but is counterbalanced with difficult multipliers, so Grimmsnarl takes some nuance, for sure. So, for the grid, the 1-5 only has MGRs for Spirit Break and Bull Cap. Remember that Bull Cap is a status move that consumes gauges, so having the recharge can help before Fierce Sync while doing that setup transition. The 2-5 yields Fall Fighting 3, so you have a proper multiplier to make Spirit Break a little chunkier, and it helps. You've also got more MGRs for pretty much all your actions, as well as Spirit Break Ripple Effect 4, so a 50% chance of spreading the debuff, so it makes for some decent defensive utility. There is also a Crunch on roll 1 to consider, which enhances Crunch's 20% chance to debuff defense to 40%. But if you're playing for defense debuffs, you are better off bringing Champion Iris with Defense Crush too, so she can also help you out with the special attack debuff multipliers that we talked about at the end earlier. So on the full grid, you get Crunch Staggering 1, which is meant to play off Fall Fighting 3, so you can apply interference yourself, but Trap is a much better catalyst for Fall Fighting 3 as a multiplier, because it's essentially a permanent interference. It just sticks around for a really long time. And you've also got a quick tempo, which is Kiawe is innate passive that accelerates the move gauge when you enter the field, so that can help with setup. You've got Fierce State 4 and Impervious to help Grimmsnarl's tanking role, but if you go for any of these defensive utility, then you are sacrificing offensive multipliers, so I don't think it's proper. And lastly, you've got a super duper effective 2. It's a very easy, simple multiplier to use, so you should grab that in super effective contexts if you don't want to bother with the setup of the other multipliers. So if you go for the 3-5 Grimmsnarl, remember that you can adjust depending on what you want to bother with, because if you don't want to bother with Fall Fighting 3, then you can afford to grab other tiles. So something I would do would be this, use Grimmsnarl as a main striker. Super Duper Effective 2 is a really easy multiplier to use, so I would take advantage of it where possible, but if you're running this off-type, then you can drop that and go for more utility, like Ripple Effect 4 for Spirit Break or Fierce State 4, it's viable. But Devastation plus Aura Power is a more cohesive array of multipliers because they scale off of the same debuff. You kill a couple bears with one stone. Now, the one qualm I have with Grimmsnarl is that you are normally pairing it with Sync pairs who can Sync Nuke with similar success, like Champion Iris. So instead of running a hybrid build with the Sync Nuking options, you can also go for a pure DPS build. Just go for all the power you can, focus your resources on augmenting DPS for Grimmsnarl, and then let Champion Iris erase something with her Devastation plus Pecking Order, enhance Sync Nuke, well, that's pretty much everything you can do with Grimmsnarl. You can fiddle with the defensive utility, but the core of this unit is buffing up really fast and then punish the enemy with augmented Spirit Breaks. So really solid all around, but in all honesty, if you have a Palentine's Arena and Dianta, you probably don't have to bother. Grimmsnarl is a really fun unit, but it takes nuance and its damage is comparable to other fairy type strikers. Alright, this should be an easy one. According to the Datamine, later this month we have a new event where we can recruit a free sync pair, and this is Bugsy and Scyther, bug type support. And apparently the 5-5 is free because you can exchange more Bugsy copies with vouchers, so that's pretty nice. Now, my guy here has coined the dubious title of free-to-play Signature Blue. I am not sure about that, but the reason is the terrain move, because you've got a +1 crit for entire party as well as Gauge Acceleration. So this is a to-the-top clone, and Gauge Acceleration is one of the more potent field effects because it allows you to execute more attacks more often. So it's quite good, but the problem is that Gauge Acceleration is not as powerful unless you can buff speed, which is where Signature Blue is to the top Pep Rally comes into play. And Bugsy doesn't have direct speed buffs for a party, so it's more restrictive in that sense. So this terrain move is the focus of the kit. Refreshable move gauge acceleration is quite powerful, and it enables things like Dual Strike. You also have an MBR3 on the grid, so there is a potential to maximize critical hit rate for the entire party, though resetting for to the top MPR is one of my least favorite things about Xenosu Blue, so I am not too excited about Bugsy sharing the same illness, but beggars can be choosers. Regardless, that is not the only thing that Bugsy can do, it's just scratching the surface. You've got some okay stats, decent defenses, this is a BP Morty tier, but the issue with Bugsy is that he cannot raise his own defensive stats, except through Toughen Up 1, so he is a lot squishier comparatively speaking. Though given his kid, he has a more hyper-offensive playstyle, so this is not too bad. You've got a Leer, and you know I am in cahoots with debuffing, so I really like that. This is just something for Bugsy to do once he's done buffing the party, to enhance the offense of your other strikers. And you also got X Attack All, so Bugsy favors physical offense, and the Fury Cutter. So the way this move works is that it doubles in base power when you use it in succession, and it caps out at 5 chains, I think. But the issue with Fury Cutter is that its chain is quite delicate. If you use anything else, the chain breaks, and Fury Cutter resets in base power. Whether you miss a Fury Cutter, or you use a turn move, or you sync, then Fury Cutter just goes back to 9 BP, and you have to keep working on the chain again. And Fury Cutter is still decent because it scales to some brutal levels, especially when you account for the fact that we have some Fury Cutter tiles on the grid. But the DNA accounted for this because they gave Bugsy a horrid attack stat. This is her Rosa tier. But if you want to meme, we can make it work. We'll get to that in a bit, but Bugsy is really better off spamming Leer instead. I think that will get you better results because Bugsy is there to assist physical strikers rather than attempt to deal damage himself. You have Post Haste 3, 40% chance of raising speed by 2 stages when you get hit, and on the run too, so when you reach critical health, you raise evasion by a couple of stages. There is some mild benefits to tanking with Bugsy, but he will not survive a long encounter. You have to bring some defensive support because Bugsy by himself will have issues surviving potent attacks. Ultimately, Bugsy and Scyther is a support in a similar vein to BP Surge and Raichu or Healer and Samurott, where he's supposed to help pick up the pace of your strikers. But the issue with Bugsy is that his buffs are very slow ramping. You only get a +1 crit or +2 attack per use of a turn move, so if you want Bugsy to take care of all your offensive buffs, he's going to take 6 rounds of combat. So he pairs better with strikers who buff self-sufficiently, so that Bugsy can top them off instead, and he can focus on debuffing the enemy with Leer and accelerating your offense that way. So in this vein, he is more similar to Kukui, who can also help the party with offensive buffs. Now, in theory, everyone is getting the free 5-5 Bugsy and Scyther, so we can assume a full grid here. Some noteworthy tiles are First Aid 4, some healing, you've got MPRs for return moves, as well as some tanking tools with a Island 3-1, as well as Toughen Up 1. And if you're bringing Scyther, it's probably in dual strike team compositions, so you want to tank with him anyway. Something I would do would be this. Just go for the turn move MPR for that refreshable gauge acceleration and all the tanking tools. A little bit of healing, hopefully Scyther lasts long enough, and Leer MGR, because once you're done buffing, you want to start spamming Leer to enhance physical damage. And really, that's it. You've got also Synchro Healing 1 as well as Safety Tether, but you don't want to sync with Scyther because he doesn't have the 6-star EX support bonus. Syncing with this guy is a bit of a waste. So I mentioned a Fury Cutter build earlier, and this is a kind of terrible support meme I do to have fun, so I don't actually recommend it per se, but it's functional. If you grab all the Fury Cutter BP tiles, it actually reaches a brutal threshold, like a 168 base power. And despite the nerfed attack stat, Scyther is unironically a better striker than Beedrill, Bugsy and Beedrill, so this reaches similar damage to Invigorating Hail 5 Frostbreath Glacia, so it's nothing crazy, but it can unironically do some decent damage. And despite the fact that Scyther itself is a self-sufficient striker, you still want to bring somebody else to support the party, because Scyther wants to start spamming Fury Coder as soon as possible to stack the scaling. And if you waste time buffing, then you are not actually attacking with Fury Coder, but I still think that spamming Leer is better, because to truly reap the benefits of this set, you need another bug-type striker to give you the type skills. So someone like Gosma, or maybe Noland for a dual Fury Coder core, and if you use Noland, you can even bring Maxi to activate Coin Pride and enhance the party a bit further. But again, that is a really memey team composition, but it can function, especially because you have Eagle Eye 3, so you can buff Creed by attacking with Fury Coder instead of wasting time using the turn move. So I just wanted to mention it, but if you want to see it, I will do the meme showcase someday, so don't worry about it too much. But yeah, this is an extremely solid free sync pair, so make sure to grab the 5-5. And the OG Legendary finally has a sync grid. Now, Cheren is the only 5-star that's missing a sync grid, which is really funny to me. Anyway, here we have Giovanni and Mewtwo, a free-to-play legendary sync pair, so the 5-5 2020 is free. And man, I still remember grinding this event. I had to spend like 6 hours a day using my stupid blue and Pidgeotto because I didn't pull Karen and Grimsley yet. Man, those were some good times. But as you may tell from my tone, this unit has quite a history, though it's a very straightforward striker. When you account the 2020, Mewtwo has a fantastic stat spread. It's still very squishy, but the offenses are phenomenal. 510 is one of the highest special attack stats in the game, and it has an excellent speed stat, so it's very capable of maintaining gauge used by itself. And besides that, it's used your run-of-the-mill striker. You have your trainer move that buffs critical hit rate by a couple of stages, and it buffs evasion, so it's a dire hit plus. And you got your 1-bar spam psychic for an okay 3-bar move. It has a chance of dropping a special defense, Shadow Ball for some coverage. So typically people use Giovanni as ghost type coverage for Champion Stadium, and honestly that's one of his better functions. This move has a 20% chance of dropping a special defense, so it's higher than psychic. Is proc, the sync move doesn't have a side effect, and your only multiplier is Power Source 2, which is difficult to set up, so you usually never play Giovanni when accounting for that multiplier. But my guy is one step below Lusamine as the definition of a glass cannon. You have excellent offenses, counterbalance with very squishy defensive stats, and Giovanni's biggest issue is that he cannot raise a special attack by himself. You have to bring a support for that, and the grid doesn't solve that at all, so that is really unfortunate. The lack of a special attack buffs restrains Mewtwo's team compositions, but the grid is really good. It gives it some very chunky multipliers, specifically Smarty Pants and Brain Teaser, which scale from special defense debuffs. And when you are already debuffing special defense to augment your damage, you can just deal some really good numbers with these, though sync pairs that can lower special defense are far in between. You kinda need limited sync pairs for that, like Palentine's Dawn and Signature Leaf. But if you can get this zone, Mewtwo's damage will really surprise you. And you also have a Critical Strike 3 for a free multiplier. Every Mewtwo grid is going to grab this because it augments your BP as well as your sync. So it is very, very good. Besides that, you also have Endurance. So with this, you can run my Power Reserves plus Taunt strat, where you can tank with Mewtwo, just wait until it falls onto Power Resource range, and then use a sync pair like Licia, Phoebe, or Glacia to take the aggro away so that Mewtwo doesn't die. But you can set up Power Resource reliably with that setup. But the problem is that we are only working with a Power Resource 2 here, so I don't like it as much as running Power Resource 5 on Solgaleo, where your output becomes crazy when you have the multiplier. So, pre-grid Giovanni struggled to compete against Caitlyn of all sync pairs, who doesn't even have any multipliers, and Bianca's introduction just kinda sealed the deal for Giovanni. But now that you have your grid with Critical Strike 3, you can actually compete with Bianca. Your output is very, very similar to hers. But I want to make a little callback to the fact that Giovanni cannot raise a special attack, so you have to bring that for him to function. And what you would prefer to do is bring a Psychic Terrain as well as a special defense debuffer, but the only unit that can give you that roll compression is Palentine's Dawn, who can raise your special attack with her turn move. But when you do that, you are not bringing crit support for Bianca, and you miss out on a lot of DPS. It's not really worth going for. So when accounting for that, it is really tough to work Giovanni at maximum efficiency, because we just don't have a sync pair that can set up a Psychic Terrain as well as buff a special attack for a party. Now, Bianca is Giovanni's primary competition, but she's a much better sync pair relatively speaking, because she can summon the Psychic Terrain, she can tank, she can give the party AoE regeneration, accelerate gauge, give party speed buffs, so she gives you a lot more roll compression at the exchange of requiring crit support, which Giovanni doesn't take advantage of because he still needs special attack buffs, and Giovanni's maximum output is still less efficient than running him alongside Bianca for the Psychic Terrain multiplier, and Bianca outdamages Giovanni by adjusting her grid, and 2020 Bianca is not even a competition. Don't let that dissuade you though, because Bianca plus Giovanni plus Sabrina is a brutally strong Psychic type striking core, and what you can do is run Giovanni as a bruiser instead. You can run all the Psychic tiles, your multipliers, as well as Psychic on a roll 2, dual on a roll 2, so this is a 50% chance of debuffing special defense with Psychic, and you can enhance damage for yourself as well as Bianca, and I don't see very many enemies surviving that output, even though Giovanni is not fully capitalizing from every single multiplier at his disposal. But this is a moot point if you don't have Bianca, who is the only unit who can summon Psychic Terrain at the moment. In that case, what you can attempt to do instead is using Giovanni as your primary DPS alongside a special defense debuffer like Mind Games 9 Venoshock Koga, or dual on a roll 2 Energy Ball Erika and Bioplume, and attempt to debuff a special defense so that you can just deliver very potent attacks through Brain Teaser and Smarty Pants. And that's about everything you can do with Giovanni. You can also go for Weird Recovery just to get a little bit of health alongside Bianca, and some utility for Shadow Ball, but there is nothing else crazy besides going for raw multipliers that Giovanni offers. So yeah, I think this is a really high investment priority for any new player, because Giovanni is an absurdly strong unit, and he single-handedly cheeses Psychic Week or Ghost Week stages in Champion Stadium. But with all that said, I think we're done here. Yeah, we checked out every new sync pair, so we can close down this video. Personally, I'm gonna go pull for Ingo and Emmet. By the time I upload this video, I probably will have done so, and I am going to 6-star EX Ingo as well, because I love Sand as a playstyle, and I happen to have a lot of units that function properly in there, so maybe I can do some fun showcases through Ingo. Well, thank you so much for watching, take care, and I hope to see you another time.